Lisa here from BI Studio of Emotional Intelligence. Before we jump in, I want to share something special. My INFJ communication video, the one you're about to watch, was selected by HeyGen as one of their December Creators of the Month. And honestly, it means a lot. This video breaks down how INFJs communicate, why we struggle, and how anyone, INFJ or not, can strengthen the way they speak, listen, and show up for the people they care about. If you pay close attention, you'll notice the storytelling details, the emotional pacing, and the visual components that make the message resonate. Tools like HeyGen are changing the way we communicate online, and they've been a huge part of helping me bring my vision, my characters, and my storytelling to life. So to the HeyGen team, thank you for recognizing my work and for giving creators like me the tools to create content that actually makes people feel seen. And to you, watching right now, take a moment, breathe in, and get ready to learn something new about communication, empathy, and what it really means to be understood. Let's get into it. Here is INFJ Communication, Why You're Misunderstood, featured in HeyGen's December 2025 Spotlight. I've talked about INFJs for months now. Intuition, empathy, burnout, emotional depth. But today I'm stepping into something far more personal, far more revealing, and honestly, far more misunderstood. Because if there's one part of the INFJ experience that quietly shapes everything, relationships, careers, friendships, conflict, connection, it's the way we communicate. Not how we talk, how we translate. So today I want to dissect something I've never fully broken down before, the INFJ communication style. How we speak, how we listen, how we say everything without saying anything, and how, despite having one of the most emotionally intelligent minds, INFJs often feel misunderstood in conversations that were supposed to be simple. This topic isn't fluff. It's not a personality meme. It's a psychological blueprint. Because INFJs aren't just deep communicators. We operate with an entire communication system that runs in layers, metaphors, intuition, and hidden meaning. And once you understand this system, you'll understand why INFJs connect so intensely and disconnect so abruptly. Let's start with the truth that nobody says out loud. INFJs are bilingual, not in languages and realities. We speak the language of words, but we also speak the language of what's under the words. Tone, behavior, subtext, contradiction, emotional energy, pattern shifts, all of it. While someone talks, we're listening to what they're saying, but also what they're not saying, what they wish they could say, and what they're trying to hide. We decode people the way some people decode puzzles, but here's the problem. When you're fluent in emotional subtext, the surface-level conversation becomes exhausting. Small talk is awkward not because INFJs are shy, but because small talk has no subtext. There's nothing underneath to interpret, nothing meaningful to connect with, nothing to translate. You can't decode weather updates, grocery store chatter, or polite filler sentences. They don't point anywhere. They don't reveal anything. So INFJs feel like aliens trying to speak a language with no verbs. And if you've ever been in a conversation where you felt mentally tired before you even replied, that's why. You weren't bored. You were starving. INFJs need psychological nutrition, meaning insight, depth, internal movement, or we can't stay engaged. Let's dig deeper. One of the most misunderstood parts of INFJ communication is this. INFJs respond to meaning, not words. If someone says, "I'm fine," we don't hear, "I'm fine." We hear the crack in the voice, the slight pause, the shift in tone, the contradiction between what they say and how they breathe. Someone else in the room hears a sentence. An INFJ hears a story. And because of that, we respond to the story, not the sentence. But this creates a huge problem. INFJs often reply to the emotion the other person hasn't admitted yet. And when you respond to something people aren't consciously aware they're expressing, they get confused or defensive or overwhelmed. That's why INFJs get labeled as too intense, too sensitive, or reading into things. When in reality, we're not reading into. We're reading accurately, just earlier than everyone else. INFJs also have a communication timing difference. We process fast internally, but slow externally. The INFJ brain makes intuitive leaps, dozens of them, before we ever open our mouth. That's why conversations can feel distressing. By the time someone finishes their sentence, we've already connected that sentence to 3 emotional patterns, 2 past memories, a symbolic metaphor, and a future prediction. Then someone asks us, "What do you think?" And our brain goes, "Where do I begin?" And so we hesitate, not because we don't know what to say, but because we have too much to say. We don't want to overwhelm people. We don't want to confuse them. We don't want to reveal too much of ourselves. So INFJs shorten the message, but shortening it dilutes it. And that's how INFJs become misunderstood even when they're being honest. Now let's talk about INFJ listening, because this is where communication becomes powerful. INFJs don't listen to reply, we listen to understand. And that's why people love talking to INFJs. They feel heard in a way they rarely experience. Conversations with INFJs feel like therapy, safe, warm, reflective, meaningful. But here's the dark side. INFJs often build emotional intimacy unilaterally. The other person walks away feeling deeply understood, while the INFJ walks away feeling deeply unknown. This is the INFJ communication wound. We communicate for others, not with others. We speak to harmonize, support, soothe, or hold space, instead of speaking from our true voice. And when INFJs do try to express emotion, we often express it metaphorically, gently, indirectly, because we're afraid of overwhelming people with the intensity we actually feel. But metaphors require interpretation, and not everyone knows how to interpret us. So we become misquoted, misread, misinterpreted, and misunderstood again and again and again. This brings us to conflict, the INFJ's most avoided communication arena. Conflict for INFJs isn't just stressful, it's overstimulating. When emotions escalate, the INFJ nervous system goes into hyperperception mode. Every tone shift becomes an alarm. Every facial expression becomes a puzzle. Every contradiction becomes a threat. We don't just hear the argument, we hear the emotional history behind it, the future consequences, and the psychological wounds underneath. That's why INFJs withdraw, not because we're passive, not because we're afraid, but because we're processing too much at once. The brain is overloaded with emotional data. Stepping back isn't avoidance, it's recalibration. But here's the irony. INFJs are some of the best communicators in the world when the environment is calm, safe, and meaningful. We articulate what people feel but can't say. We create emotional bridges. We identify the real issue instead of the surface argument. We translate the subconscious into conscious language. This is why INFJs excel in counseling, teaching, writing, strategy, mediation, coaching, and leadership. We don't communicate to impress. We communicate to reveal truth, but only when our internal system feels grounded. When it doesn't, we shut down, disappear, or default to emotional neutrality. Now let's go deeper to the true heart of INFJ communication, internal dialogue. No one talks to an INFJ more than an INFJ talks to themselves. Our inner world is our real conversation, and that internal monologue shapes how we interact externally. Inside, we're bold, articulate, poetic, visionary, but externally, we filter our voice through layers of caution, empathy, and analysis. We don't say what we really want to say. We say what we believe will land safely. And that is where communication becomes limiting, because INFJs are trying to control both sides of the emotional experience, how we deliver and how the other person receives it. That's not communication, that's emotional management. And INFJs do it because they're afraid of hurting people, afraid of disappointing people, afraid of being misunderstood. But here's the truth INFJs need to hear. Communication is not responsibility management. Communication is expression, and expression requires release, not control. So let's talk about how INFJs can communicate better, not by changing who we are, but by understanding who we are. The INFJ communication system works best when we follow 3 principles: clarity, pacing, and reciprocity. Clarity means speaking from your own emotional center, not from the emotions you're absorbing. Say what you feel, not what you think the other person wants to hear. Say what you mean, even if the sentence feels too honest. INFJ communication becomes powerful when we stop softening our truth and start refining it. Pacing means giving your mind permission to express ideas before they're perfect. You don't need to compress 3 pages of intuitive insight into one polite sentence. Let the thoughts breathe. Let the emotions exist. INFJs speak slowly when we feel safe, but we speak beautifully when we stop over-editing our voice. Reciprocity means inviting the other person to understand you at the same depth you understand them, not through pressure, through vulnerability, through small honesty, through naming what you need in communication. INFJs don't need more words. We need more mutuality. Let me end with this. INFJs communicate like poets, even when we're silent. We speak through intuition, listen through emotion, interpret through metaphor, and connect through meaning. And because of that, INFJs are often the emotional anchors in their relationships, but rarely the emotional recipients. Communication for us has always been about understanding others. Today, I'm giving you permission to let communication also be about revealing yourself, because you don't need to speak loudly to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood, and you don't need to decode everyone else while keeping your own voice quiet. You deserve conversations where your depth is not too much, your honesty is not intimidating, and your intuition is not misinterpreted. INFJs don't communicate to win. We communicate to connect. And when we finally speak from our true inner world, not the filtered version we offer to protect others, that's when the INFJ voice becomes unstoppable. Quiet, but undeniable. Calm, but unforgettable. Gentle, but powerful. If this helped you see your own communication style more clearly, let me know in the comments. And if you're ready for more deep dives into rare minds, emotional intelligence, and the hidden psychology behind personality, stay close. We're just getting started.